good evening, and welcome to the City Council work session for August 16th. It's 5:30. We're ready to get started. So all City Council and Mayor are here, and we are ready to begin. So I'd like to ask if anyone would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd love to. I'm already up. Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Then I would like to ask if somebody had or would give us an invocation or an inspirational thought.
Mayor, I'll do that if you want me.
Sure.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee at this time and thank thee for the opportunity we have to meet and discuss the affairs of Santaquin City. We ask thy spirit to be with us and the protection over us and over our families as we're away from them, and that we might be able to have thy understanding and thy will and knowing what to do that's best for our residents. And we thank thee for the opportunity that it is to serve. And we say this in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We'll just jump right into the items that we have listed. So the moderate income housing strategies and implementation, this is the result of the state of Utah and the legislature coming down on you will meet so many of these regulations in order to be eligible for any funding or future considerations, as well as things that we need to look at to make our city better. And we had some things that were coming up that we talked about putting on the agenda, and they actually were put off so that we could possibly look at in the coming months, including those into this list, which carries us on, because if we pass them, then they didn't count. So we have to wait for a little while. So with that, Jason, do you want to talk about the strategies and how we might implement some of these things?
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, at the last meeting, I handed out some hard copies to you, and then later in the week sent you an email with this on it. Hopefully you were able to take a look at it and read through what the requirement is and why there's a requirement. Excuse me. Again, the deadline to update our moderate income housing plan is October 1st. We're now mid-August, and so obviously one of the next two council meetings we probably need to have this on and have something considered to adopt to update our moderate income housing plan. It really comes down to simply that there's two things we need to do. One is, and I'm trying to, let's see. So it even says this housing element should include two pieces: specific strategies which the jurisdiction intends to utilize, and an implementation plan to see those strategies through over the next 5 years. And then it even refers to the strategy letters A through X as a menu of strategies that we have to pick from. And then for those and based on the characteristics of our community, because we don't have a transit station, we only need to pick 3 strategies. You could pick more if you wanted, but the minimum that we are required to do is 3. So with that said, I wanted to bring this forward to the council in a work meeting to have you discuss it, maybe give me some direction on some of the strategies that you like or are leaning towards. And then we can kind of work on how those things might be implemented. I guess what I would say is and in conjunction with the discussions that we've had lately on detached accessory dwelling units, I think there's a couple strategies that could relate to that. And that's partly why I would suggest we hold off on adopting anything related to that topic, because we may as well wait until after October and get credit for implementing or adopting a code that applies detached accessory dwelling units, which is considered a strategy for providing moderate income housing. So that strategy is strategy E, and frankly, my suggestion is instead of just allowing, which Planning Commission and I know Council talked about this, and where maybe this could have gone was opening up detached accessory dwelling units in all residential zones, maybe to have to qualify for these implementation procedures that we're required to do every year. Maybe we allow it in the next residential zone every year, and that way we're making this progress and showing the state that we are taking steps in the right direction. Now, I hate to say that, because I feel like if you feel like it's right for the community to open up in all residential zones, then I don't want to hold you back from doing that. But the way I see this moderate income housing requirement going is that each year we need to do some sort of implementation to show that we are doing something. Unfortunately, you don't get credit for what you've done in the past, and I think it's doing something every year. So this is it appears to me like this is kind of the new normal of every year having to show the state that the city is actively not just strategizing for, but actually doing something and implementing procedures to help with moderate income housing. So that one to me was the obvious one. There's other ones that are related to that. Really, I guess the purpose of tonight is I want to hear what your thoughts are if you read through those strategies, and see if there's any other strategies that you want to give me direction on pursuing a little bit. I know there's probably, the majority of these strategies probably give you and probably give some of the residents of the city some anxiety, and they don't love some of these things that are in there. But again, this is one of those things that is a mandate from the state, and I guess let me speak to that just a little bit. What has been indicated to me in some of these online trainings and Zoom meetings describing this state requirement is that not fulfilling this requirement and having strategies in place to meet this requirement could qualify the city to not get funding, what they call the transportation.
It's TIP or TIP.
It's not the TIP that we usually talk about. It's not the TIP projects with MAG, but it's basically the pool of money that comes from all of the transportation tax money, which basically is a roundabout way of saying that we may not qualify to get any funding from UDOT, period, unless we meet this requirement. That's what they've considered, indicated a penalty could be. So that's a big deal, because there's a lot of funding that comes through UDOT for projects that happen in the city. So this is certainly something we need to make sure we comply with. And they've even indicated that if there's two cities that are looking for state funding on some given topic, that if there's one city that is not meeting the requirement, or there's one city that has 4 strategies rather than just 3, there could be priority towards the city that's doing more. So there's a little bit of the incentive to do more. There's a little bit of pinning cities against each other to qualify and look better in a funding application or a grant application. So that's just something else to keep in mind with possible ramifications of not meeting this requirement. So I guess with that, love to hear what your thoughts are and receive any input that you have.
Jason, I didn't understand the timeline. There's a deadline of October 1st, but yet it's proposed that we wait till after October 1st so we get credit. How do we balance those two?
Yeah, so what I mean by that is the discussion related to allowing detached accessory dwelling units. I would suggest holding off on that until October 1st. The process that we're doing now is just updating the moderate income housing element of our general plan. They're 2 separate things.
Which is due by the October 1st.
Right.
Just the updating of the plan itself that we send to the state, without any of our coding or zoning like Jason's talking.
So in essence, we update our moderate income housing element.
And that would not include any of these?
That's what
so
it's
it's exactly what we're talking
So
about.
we can't include accessory dwelling units in that update then? We gotta reserve that.
No, we included in the update of our moderate income housing plan now,
And then we change the code.
and then after October we
Oh.
change our code,
Oh, okay.
and they say, "Good job,
job.
Santaquin, you did
This is our
something."
plan, now we did it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
But if we
Okay.
if we adopted an ordinance to allow accessory
Okay.
dwelling
Yeah.
units
It wouldn't
today,
count.
they wouldn't give us credit for
Yeah.
that because
Yeah.
it was after our plan was adopted.
Good. Well, I liked E, and R goes along with it.
Yep.
And then, because of
Eliminate
my
impact
vantage
fees.
point in life, I like you. The 55.
I saw
and
that
older.
one too.
The 55 and older.
Okay.
So can you say those again, sorry?
Yeah. So E, R, and U is ones that he pointed out.
Yeah, like
Why is the reason that we want to eliminate any kind of an impact fee? Because there is
it's
an
it's
impact
only
that
for
comes
accessory
from it.
dwelling units.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but why do we want to do that? That increases the amount of water, it increases the amount of sewer, and the need to do so.
But for most of them, the hookups are already there with the main dwelling.
They'll have
They-
to
they will-
have secondary
gonna-
metering and everything.
Well, the metering, yeah, that's
It's
true.
not
but
as much
this
of an
is not
impact,
as much of
though.
an impact as many of these other issues.
And it says reduce, you don't have to eliminate, it says reduce.
Eliminate. No, this one does say eliminate
R
impact
does say
fees.
eliminate. There's another one that talks about
Reducing them.
reducing
L.
that is
L.
reduce, waive, or
Oh.
eliminate impact fees related to moderate income housing, and I think that probably could work as well. That was one that I looked at as maybe a reduction, and again I think accessory dwelling units are a lot more efficient
Yeah.
where there's already existing infrastructure. In some ways they're going to be more efficient because they would take up space of irrigated property.
Yep.
If they took up someone's lawn, that uses a lot more water than say
In the house
someone's
itself.
shower or dishwasher.
Fewer residents too,
Well, it could
in
create.
ADU.
Well, yeah. I mean, it could create more residents just because you've got more actual dwellings, but
But fewer per dwelling is
Mhm.
is that what you're
Yeah.
talking
Yes,
about,
yes.
Art? Is
Per
that you're not
acre.
going to have as many people living in an ADU as
It's
you would
less
Right.
a
dense.
single family home.
right.
Could we?
So fewer people using the water for that acre.
Not
Could we do
Not high
what
density.
L this year? Just reduce the fees, and if we're seeing that there aren't even that many applications, next year do R, that eliminates it.
I mean, we take direction from the council what you want to do. Here's one thing I'll say about
Would that
ADUs.
raise a flag somewhere? I don't know. Just
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things as I've looked at this is how do we meet the letter of the law,
Yeah.
but then also kind of make it work for what Santaquin wants. Here's what I'll say about detached accessory dwelling units, and again, I think the Planning Commission and City Council, at least from my observation, has indicated that they're more open to it. If there was any concerns about it, we've allowed it in the R8 zone for a couple years now, and we have not had one build. If these are things that we allow for, it's just I think you're not going to have the floodgates open and everybody's going to start building a detached accessory dwelling unit. I think if you allow it
Yeah.
in more zones, it's more likely, and I mean, obviously we know some residents who are very seriously exploring that, but that's one of the nice things about that particular topic is I think it does meet these requirements, but I think, in my opinion, I think detached accessory dwelling units are truly a form of affordable housing
Yep.
because just of their sheer size, they're
Yeah.
not very big. Apartment complexes and townhomes, they might meet in some ways, being more affordable, but a lot of people look at those and feel like that's not affordable, and a lot of times they're accompanied with HOA fees or
Yeah.
things like that doesn't seem to really accomplish that goal. So.
I was also, my attention was drawn to you, as Councilmember Adcock said. The way that that's worded creates a little bit of nervousness for me that it's worded develop a moderate income housing project, not a plan
Right.
for
But an actual
disabled
project,
and 55 and older, but that the city is taking responsibility to develop a project for 55 and older. That's the concern that I have with that one.
And my personal opinion is I read that one. I didn't necessarily think that all of a sudden, Norm and I are going to become developers and come up with some 55. It would probably be a partnership with some developer to
we
implement that in our
provide the land and they do a development
Mhm.
for
And
that
that's
type
what
of
I
person.
think in this discussion we need to we need to all be on the same page about what we envision for that and make sure that that is an acceptable way to go about it so we still get credit for it.
And as part of this, I'd appreciate your direction, not just with which strategies you like, but the ways that you see those strategies being implemented. What type of action the city would take, whether it be a zone change or whether it be, some sort of a, budgeting for funding of something like that, or a partnership with a developer or whatever the case may be.
Because we don't, I mean, Kylie and I have dropped for several years now. We don't have any housing for that's exclusively 55 and older. There is nothing in Santaquin. And so individuals who are looking to downsize and they do not want stairs like in a townhome, they want a little single level. There isn't anything in Santaquin that is exclusively 55 and older, and if they downsize to a neighborhood that has that style home, it's in a family neighborhood, if you will, and that may not be what they're looking for. So that's kind of a niche in our market that is missing, or a hole in our available housing options that is empty.
I was gonna say, I'm a little more negative towards all of it. This whole thing reminds me of dealing with what they call the federal unfunded mandates. That's kind of how this comes over to me. The state's pretty much saying, this is what you'll do, right?
That's what it is.
Yep, that's what it is.
There'd be, and then they're holding what you said over our heads if we don't do it. To me, that's exactly what the federal government does.
Yeah.
So, taking what the mayor says, the comment, I don't see us wanting to put anything that takes away the financial side for us. Now, maybe some zone changes and stuff like that I can accept, but I wouldn't go with anything that reduces fees or giving away that it costs the city.
Okay.
That makes sense, but I'm just,
Well, I was just gonna ask a question on Ann. I think I understand that one, but what do you see, or what have other cities done to implement a mortgage assistance for employees?
Well, that is a great question. That's one that I looked at as well, as maybe the council being open to. I don't know.
'Cause that helps employees. I know it costs, but
Right.
we're also helping people who aren't making a lot of money. We're talking about paying cops and
Right.
our other employees more money. Maybe it helps both ways.
Well, and the answer to that question is I don't know, because this is new for everybody in the state. And
So we would
everybody's
have
gonna,
to develop our own.
we'd have to come up with an idea of that would probably make that work. What I would look, as I read that, what I would maybe think could work is maybe, there's a definition for what moderate income housing is per state code. And maybe we kind of mirror that definition and say if we have employees that fit in that category, then there may be some sort of a assistance program or something that can help them, just something like that. But again, that gets into the budgeting for things and
Well,
how
they
do you
all
monitor
do.
that?
They all do.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
some
Just like you said,
way or
depends on if
form.
we want to help people.
They all do. Yeah, that one piqued my interest too. So I would like to ask, could you please find out if there are other cities who have implemented something like that and get the details on their program and then bring it back to us?
I can look around and see what I can learn about that. Again, I don't think any cities implemented this yet because they're all probably
brand new this
they're
year.
all probably scrambling the same way that I shouldn't say we're scrambling, but they're all probably gearing up to meet this deadline by October 1st. And unless we have some cities that have really gotten ahead of things and adopted something within the last couple months. But
Is this list different than the one that was published
Yeah,
a
and
couple
that's a good-
years ago
that's a great-
because we already had an MIH plan in place, which is why we didn't really address it during the general plan process, because we had already gone through that process and established it and approved it to meet the requirement. So have they changed the list? Have they changed the menu options?
That's a great question and a great point. This list of strategies was there before, and it was something that you had to pick strategies, but you didn't have to pick them word for word. Now they're suggesting you need to pick it word for word, but they've also changed a lot of these to where instead of planning for something, it's implementing. They're more stronger action words of actually doing something rather than just
A plan.
thinking about it and planning for it. So, and some of these are just outright brand new. I don't know if that mortgage assistance program was in the list before, but
I don't remember either.
I
and TODs are relatively new. So that, I mean, the buzzword of TOD is what I mean. Like the existence of them is not necessarily new, but all the discussion about planning around them is relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
So those options seemed updated to me.
And I do have a list that you can look at what was before and what was after, and I can send that to you so you can see what's changed and
Okay.
what was on the old list.
Yeah, I
But
don't know if I have a
like I
copy
say,
of the
our
old one.
current our current plan had some strategies that I think probably covered these, but they weren't worded exactly the same, and I think some of them were probably viewed as a little bit more of a stretch. Again, I think the state's saying you have to pick from this menu, and you have to put it in your plan word for word, and then you have to give us an implementation plan of how you're going to implement that.
Well, and we, like, as long as Lynn and I have been here, the state has been telling us that this has been coming, and I don't think anybody believed us. When we told them, at least that's kind of how I felt, is that, oh yeah, well, now it's here.
Can you go back to G? Does,
One,
does,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, does G fit within the Olene Walker plan and be able to utilize funds that would help to take an area and develop commercial along with some high density?
I don't think G would. I think G is more legislative power of the city to amend the zoning map to allow for that to happen. I think what would apply more to something like that would be
S.
like T, ratify a joint acquisition agreement with another. That's
Yeah,
with
but that's another city.
that's another city.
Yeah,
There's
and
another one
I
in
don't
here that
think you
talks
could do
about
it.
working with someone else to do that or to purchase land for purposes of a modern community.
I don't want to
Don't we
purchase.
have-
I want to make a deal to utilize those funds to build it, to then turn it in part of that same acreage into commercial, so that we're getting a little bit more for the bother of going through this exercise.
Okay.
It seems to me like whenever somebody thinks, oh yeah, well, we're turning all those over to the Olene Walker Fund, why don't we utilize some of those? And that creates possibility of even opening up a chance for some low to moderate income housing, or for certain places to develop that for their own needs.
Is it F? Would F be the one that you're talking about?
F?
Yes,
Well, again-
F refers to mixed use
Well, again,
as well.
that's zoning or rezoning. That
Is
is
it-
directly
yeah.
your power to change the zoning map to allow for those uses.
I'm just trying to figure out the one that Mayor's referring to.
I've talked with you about a couple of
I'm not sure
places,
what's the
and I don't
impact.
know how
I
they
don't think
fit
the
in
impact
here.
is,
I've
'cause we're
looked
not
at
gonna
2 or 3
get
of
less
them,
money
and
from it anyway.
first one I thought was S fit
We're
within that,
losing
but S doesn't
$400
because there are
years.
other political entities that have to
To help
be
us get past this and
introduced
get more
as
money.
part of it,
It's gonna-
Yeah.
and I don't want
You'll have
that.
an R1.
All right, I don't think that fits in.
S is TDRs.
Yeah.
See, that's why
Yes.
yeah, that's why I like
So what about
reduce it
B?
the first year, reduce it the next year, phase it.
Yeah, that one was tricky because we've obviously done some investment
In
in our own
infrastructure.
infrastructure, but how you directly relate that to
MIH.
exactly moderate income housing is the tricky
The
thing.
tricky part.
We've done that for commercial. We've invested in our own infrastructure to see commercial happen. It
Yeah.
would be that way, except for you'd be investing in infrastructure and building roads and pipes and stuff to open up land so that it can be built on with moderate income housing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've had a chance to read through these, and we've discussed them for a half an hour right now. That only leaves us 8 minutes apiece for everything that's left that we want to go over. Do we want to keep beating on this, or would it be possible that you could take what has been said at this point and let's take a look and see if there are places that we could focus on now that will help us turn this into a little better developable idea in the next meeting and just do the same thing again, rather than spend the whole time on one thing.
And that's fine. And what I'll do is there's some that I thought were pretty obvious that I knew the council would be open-minded to. I will
If
take
you do it
those
smart,
and maybe just
might
do a
actually
very
work.
rough draft of what an implementation
you have to do it. Exactly.
plan.
Be very-
And by the implementation plan, I kind of see this as just language directly related to the action that the council would take, in the future, and kind of what that plan is. So, for instance, detached accessory dwelling units, maybe it's every year, another residential zone will allow for detached accessory dwelling units to happen. Boom, we got one strategy done, two more to go. I will take the other ones that you've indicated that you're open to, and I'll think creatively to see if I can create kind of a similar implementation plan for you to kind of look at, review, and we can continue to work on this.
Yeah, let's highlight it and get it in front of us. And let's move it out a couple of weeks now. We can think about it. We can come back to this, but then we can discuss it in a little more condensed size, because all we're trying to drag out of this is 3 items.
Right.
And we don't have to digest this whole thing. Let's just find the burgers rather than the whole elephant.
And I'm happy to send you emails. Obviously, we cannot, do a work session via email, but I'll send it to you, and feel free to stop by my office, give me a call, and tell me what you think of them. I just would stress that we have a meeting September 6th because we have a 5th Tuesday, and the next meeting after September 6th would be the one we need to adopt something, because that's our last meeting before October 1st. So we got a month and a half left, but we only have a couple meetings to really do this and consider something to meet that October 1st deadline. So I will get to work on this, and I will run things by you, and would appreciate your direction and creative ideas to try and meet this requirement.
Needless to say, we will bring it back at the next meeting and have more discussion, and then plan on either acting next meeting or at the latest the 20th. That's kind of the strategy that we'll go about. And maybe I really see this being, okay, we're going to pare this down from 26 options to 5, and then you guys can decide where you want to go with the actual 3 to really kind of get down to the nuts and bolts. That's what you're talking about, Mayor. So how do we pare this down and not have to look at all 26 different items?
And we've hit a bunch. I think those are the ones that we're going to want to focus on. We've already got them out there. Let's just take those, highlight them, and try to get our whole view down to something manageable. Okay? Okay, good. Let's move on. If everybody's okay. The Orchard Development Agreement Amendment.
All right, Mayor and Council. As you can see, the person who's joined us in the audience is Aaron Jensen. He is the developer for the Orchards development, which is on the north side of town. For a while now, we've been coordinating with him and kind of going back and forth with some ideas that he's had to amend the development agreement for this development. This is kind of the latest iteration that he's put together. And really, I should say there's 2. There's an option A and then an option B, and I'll point out the differences here in a minute. They're actually really quite minor. But to help you understand what, from staff's very high level review of this, what the differences are from the current development agreement and what he's proposing to change in the development agreement. Really, it comes down to in the original agreement, the Apple Grove apartment buildings, there was 5 of them, and you can see them here in the original agreement. In this new proposed amendment, he would like to take those 5 and basically take 2 of them and make it one building, and take the other 3 and make another building. Now, part of the reason for this is I think it's a little bit more cost efficient from the developer standpoint, because there's common walls, and it all works a little bit better that way. But also condensing those into 2 buildings opens up a lot of the area for more open space for the residents that are there. So that's part of the reason why that proposal is there. And so in conjunction with that, you can see the other major change really has to do with amenities. And you can see this amenity comparison table. Now, as we've gone through and reviewed it, for instance, in the original development agreement, we actually did see that there is half of a basketball court. And so you can see those red lines or comments that we've made. Also, just to clarify, a sports court, that basically is 2 shuffle boards and or bocce ball courts. And I guess specifically to show you, well, I'll get to that in a second. And then so you can see that instead of 13 amenities, we see it as actually 13 and a half because of the basketball court that they did not account for. In terms of what they're proposing here in option A, we only counted 5 pavilions, and maybe Aaron can point that out here in a bit. And then down below, for the 4 sports courts, it appears like on the plans that is 1 shuffleboard and or bocce ball, and then there's 3 pickleball courts. And I will show you where these are at. So this is the Apple Grove apartment area. You can see there's 2 pickleball courts there. This is the clubhouse that is on the west side of Center Street. They would show a pickleball court right next to that. And then even west of that, and I'll zoom out a little bit because these are basically zoomed in areas. So here you have the whole development. You got Apple Grove that is here. You got the clubhouse area, which is here, and then you'll have this centralized open space that is in this that would be in this future development right here. Right now this is all just raw ground. So you can see that there's this shuffleboard or bocce ball court that would be in the middle of the open space there. 1, 2, 3, 4 pavilion. Oh, there's a 5th one over here on the far west side. That's why we only, based on the legend, we only counted 5 pavilions. So then again, there's 3 pickleball courts, 1 bocce ball court, and not quite sure what a 2 final play court to be determined means, but that was a question we had for Aaron. And really, so totaling that up, it really equates to 14 amenities, or at least the way this table describes amenities, which is half amenity more. That's option A. Option B is really pretty much the same thing, except for those who were on the council a couple years ago when Aaron came and he talked about this idea, there was an idea expressed that maybe there could be a partnership with the city to get more pickleball courts, and therefore there could be some sort of an agreement or with the developer that the city would have access to program those pickleball courts for recreation purposes. And so really the main difference with this option B is instead of the the 4 sports courts, they show 7, and we see that as 5 pickleball courts. So instead of 2 in this area, there would be 4. There'd still be the same one by the clubhouse, and then they've added a shuffleboard / bocce ball court, or bocce ball, whatever you'd call that, in this centralized open space. That was the main difference that we saw there. And so really the purpose of this being on your work meeting tonight is to make these changes in the development agreement, it's going to require some time. It's going to require the time of our legal counsel, of staff, to make sure that these changes are consistent with the language in the original development agreement. And really, it's just to get your direction. We've had previous mayor and council look at it, and they gave some direction. But now that we have a new council, and it's now a year and a half, 2 years later, we wanted to get your direction again to make sure that we were doing what you felt was appropriate. And before we put all the time and effort into organizing an amendment to this, we wanted to get to see what your thoughts were on this and see if you felt like it was worth the staff's time and that. Now, with that said, I've talked with Aaron Jensen, and a lot of time would probably be needed by our legal counsel to make sure that this all is going to work. As we've discussed this, these aren't really big, major, drastic changes. I mean, I guess they're substantial, but maybe not in the sense of it's completely revamping the development. But I've indicated to him the concern we as staff has had as the time that needs to be put into this, and we've talked about maybe Aaron would pay for our legal counsel to pay for his time to look at these changes and make sure that they're incorporated appropriately and not creating discrepancies with the original development agreement. So I guess with that, Mayor, those are the changes that I saw and pointed out, and we'd love to hear your direction. I'm sure Aaron could probably expound on things, or if he's got anything more to add, but it sounds like Norm's got something to add.
So, Mayor and Council, several years ago when this came, the addition of the 2 pickleball courts on option 2 would have had some expectation that we would help financially with those so that we could have some programming space on those. Now, again, since that time, we've added 8 pickleball courts down at the south end. We have pickleball courts at Orchard Cove Park. If that's not a consideration, and that's not where we want to go, but I just want to make sure that the council understands that I believe the expectation that the developer would have is if they build all 4 of them over there by the apartments, there would be some shared costs and there would be some shared use basically for programming up on the north end where we have fewer amenities. So that was kind of the general thinking of the council that was there at the time, but just recognize that I believe is an expectation that would be had there. It's not like we can just opt for 4 courts. If there's going to be 4 versus 2 over by the apartments, there would be, I believe, some expectation of some financial assistance and some signage and parking and shared use, those types of things, not just financial assistance.
How many pickleball courts are on the Orchard Park over
There's
west and south of that?
Orchard Cove Park has 2 tennis courts, and one of the tennis courts has both tennis and
Lines.
pickleball striped for it on one of the courts. So there's really only 2 courts there at Orchard Cove Park as far as pickleball is concerned. We do have portable nets that we take down there and have that as part of our programming.
Does John Bradley have an idea of how many pickleball courts do we need them? The extra courts?
I believe that his answer to that would be yes. I think any programming that we can do, anything that we can do to add more amenities, to add more playing space, to add more, whether it be fields or pickleball courts or whatever it happens to be, that's always an asset to the city, and that's always something that I believe he would be vying for. I believe we have discussed this with him before, and he would be a proponent for these 2 additional pickleball courts.
He would make use of whatever he
That's
could
right.
get.
And the other thought I had, all of these things like putting those 5 buildings into 2, sounds like moderate income housing to me. We ought to find a way to fit it on this paper right here and approve it after October 1.
Well,
No, let's not approve it after October 1.
that's an interesting question. I don't know if that applied because this is already something
Yeah,
that's in
it's
an
already
approved development agreement.
Fitting code.
It's not,
No, we're changing it.
Could,
Well-
it could, that could certainly be something that we could look at if that's a direction that the council wanted to go. And have some negotiations with the developer on how we could make that work, whether that's an Olene Walker type fund help, or whether that's 55 and older on the bottom floor. I don't know, those
'Cause
are all,
I'm okay with putting those buildings together. I kind of like
Yeah.
that idea myself anyway. It opens up more
right, more
space, it
usable
looks
open
like
space.
anyway, and then you get the 4 pickleball courts. I love that. So I'm in favor of this. But if we can kill 2 birds with 1 rock, that's a good idea. even if we have to make a deal, I'm not saying we have to put it off, but
Yeah.
whatever we have to do to make it work.
Well, so remember, for Jason's aspect,
We just
remember
have to
there's the
have a
plan,
Yes.
and then there's the implementation. So
Yeah.
we could certainly put it in the plan that this is what we're going to explore,
Yes.
and then explore it later. That's
Yeah.
something that we could certainly do.
That's what I'm saying.
If it doesn't come to fruition, I'm not sure, that was actually a question that was asked yesterday in the city manager meeting is, what happens if we're not getting any traction on whatever the implementation is?
Yeah.
And
That's
there
what
wasn't a
I'm
clear answer from the folks at the state on that at this point in time. So other than, there would be some potential loss of financial benefit from the TIP or TIP, whatever the state's road funding, even to and including, my understanding is, could be B and C road funds, which we count on for maintenance,
Yeah.
right? And they're never enough. That's why we have the other 32.5% that we did a few years ago. But that's something I think we could look into if that's what you direct us to do.
Yeah, the moderate income housing stuff is every city's trying to figure out what it means. It's a new thing that we're all trying to kind of, shoot from the hip and make sure that we're compliant. I think in relation to this particular project, it would definitely need to take some sort of a partnership with the developer, because it's not just it's not just that we think this looks like moderate income housing and therefore it checks. It's got to actually be moderate income housing, and that's going to hit into his profits if he's not able to rent out these facilities or sell these facilities for as much as the market would bear. So that's going to be the tricky thing in this. Is I'm sure Aaron would probably be open-minded to that, but it's not just a matter of he's going to build it and we're good. It's going to be ensuring, whether it be through some sort of a deed restriction or something, that it be actual moderate income housing. And so that's something I don't think Aaron's going to just give away. It's something that he'll want to negotiate with the city.
Would you zoom in to the area where they're kind of across from one another on Center Street, up in there? How close? No, right on Center Street. Just keep going in.
Mm-hmm.
How come there's no curb, there's no sidewalks, there's nothing on that street, and yet the school has it just a couple of blocks south? What's going on?
So, Mayor, I can answer that. The transportation master plan shows this as either a collector or an artery, bigger road at some point in the future. The developer of this project, in this case, in this location, that applies to other developments as well, is only required to put in our minimum asphalt cross-section, et cetera. That was all negotiated back when 2007, and then renegotiated in 2017, I believe.
17, yeah.
And requiring the developer in this case to be able to do a full 99-foot right-of-way with all of the curb and gutter, with all of the sidewalk and all of the trails, would be considered what's called a taking or an exaction that is illegal in the state of Utah. And so essentially they've given the road, the right-of-way, and the trail and some landscaping. The only thing that really is going to be needed in the future is the wider asphalt, some storm drain inlets, and curb and gutter that is covered in our master plan at some point in the future when the funds are available for that.
How are those funded?
Through impact fees, mostly on the transportation side of things.
In essence, I think the council.
But we're doing away with impact fees on the addition of things, and that's just south of there.
Yeah, well, it's a consideration, but I think that the council at that time felt like there was no need to put in those improvements because growth is happening and that road would need to be widened and we'd have to rip it out anyways. So instead of put it in, wait till it needs to be widened and then we'd be able to have it in the appropriate location.
It's much the same as Highland Drive over in the Foothill area where they built the one half of we actually negotiated because of this situation. We negotiated on that one to get almost the full width of asphalt, storm drain, curb and gutter, and the trail section on that side in that development agreement, which was different than this one. We actually negotiated to get a better situation, but there's still a part of the road that's yet to be finished.
And we did that through some reimbursements.
Right.
We had them build it, but the city was able to reimburse it with impact fees. That's not what happened in this case, and so we have to kind of work with what the decision was made in the past.
So what's the difference with that as opposed to what we do when they make a simple split in a subdivision to create another lot in town, and we hold out the money in a way that we can develop that sometime in the future?
What you're referring to is the deferral agreements. The reason why the reason why the city has entertained deferral agreements in the past and now is because there's a lot more uncertainty of exactly what that infrastructure needs to look like in the core area of town. This is outside of the core area, and we have a lot better understanding of where that infrastructure needs to be. The core area, we have such wide right-of-ways, and it hasn't even been decided whether or not curb and gutter is what the city would like to have. You know, there's been talks of maybe some swells or something else, and it's something that you know continues to be a topic that needs to be addressed, but you know it hasn't really felt like you know the latest thing that we really have to tackle, because the city is not what's called an MS4 or a municipal storm sewer. I can't remember the acronym, but basically it's the requirements that we need to do SWIP. Right now, all the SWIP that's done in the city is done by the state. And so at some point when the city has that classification of an MS4, we're going to need to start doing those SWIP stormwater protection plans ourselves internally as a city. And so that will be a time when there's going to be more stringent requirements on the city to make sure we have the appropriate stormwater infrastructure in place. But yeah, to answer your question, deferral agreements are kind of a tool to kick that can down the road a little further until we know exactly what the design looks like for stormwater infrastructure in the core area of town. But outside of the core area, we already have infrastructure, we require infrastructure, and so we know exactly where it's at. Core area, if we did it bit by bit, we'd have islands of curb and gutter sticking way out into the right-of-way that would probably be a safety hazard, and it would just look weird.
So Mayor, also on this today, even today, there's 100+ feet of right-of-way there, which again, even today, if we went into a development agreement with Aaron or somebody else, we couldn't require that 100 feet to be completely improved. They were, the developer clear back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, deeded the entire property and put asphalt in there. Since then, they've done additional improvements to it with the landscaping and the sidewalk and the cobble and stuff in there. But even today, we could not require them to do that full road. Even today, under our current, because our local roads are only 62 feet. So even today, that would be considered an exaction unless there was some type of a development agreement where it was negotiable to have them do that for density or for whatever the case may be.
Don't we want to have an arterial road that's bigger than 66 feet? Because I know we've had this discussion
We
before.
do, which is why we have the right of way. It's just the improvements are not done yet, and the improvements can be paid for in the future using impact fees from the transportation impact fees.
And it can be argued that we just don't have the traffic count there
That is
for it to just justify the improvements for an arterial road there.
Right. That's what I was going to say. In 2017, we had Hales Engineering do a traffic study, and based on the need, the
Even if-
traffic count wasn't there, and
Yeah, even at
It's-
full build out with the apartments that are not built yet and the other ones on the other side of the road, I think there's 100+ or minus
We're
units
still
on the
not
west
gonna
side. It still doesn't require the traffic count that you're referring to for an arterial road. Part of the problem with it is quite frankly, completely outside of our city. What happens at 120th, you don't see big rigs going down that road because the turn down there at 120th is right on two culverts, and it just, you don't see big trucks even going down there. So most of the traffic that you're going to see is going to be cars, or the other traffic will go over to 200 or 400 east to be able to get to the north.
Thanks a lot.
Your road.
Okay. So what do we want to do with this?
That's our question to you.
I thought that when this hit the planning commission a few years back, that there was some discussion and concern about the clubhouse being on the opposite side of Main Street, but I don't remember the resolution.
So I believe that's where they came in with the other amenities packages that they're down on the east side over by the apartments, if you'll pull to the left, to the right there.
Okay.
I believe that's where they've come in with everything from the pickleball courts to other tot lots and the pavilions that they've got on the east side, that I believe that was the answer to it at that point in time.
Right.
Because the concern was
Negotiate
crossing Center Street. Yeah, okay.
For me, I don't see anything made, these seem minor to me, they're just changes for something that's already been approved, so
Right.
I'm okay with what's there. I think we need to personally invest in the 4 pickleball courts for.
So we'd be investing in 2 of them. He's already gonna do 2 as part of his. We would investing in the other 2.
Area for
What's the
court.
cost?
What is, yeah,
Well, that's yet to be determined. We'd have to come back with that. What we're here for you tonight is to give us direction on how you would like us to then work with Brett and Mr. Jensen to figure out a development agreement that we could then bring you back.
Okay.
Right now, we don't have all of those details because we didn't want to spend the time to get the design and all the legal work and everything if you weren't going to consider that. But if you're considering that and that's the direction that you give us, that's what we're asking for tonight, is direction on where you would have us go and get to work to bring you something back that would have those numbers, the participation, how everything works, all that kind of stuff.
Something to think about is all of this area in there is going to be common open space for those residents in that development.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be patrolling and kicking out people who aren't residents of that particular development. But if the city were to do a partnership with those 2 extra pickleball courts, we'd have access to those 2 pickleball courts. But again, it's still public pickleball courts or pickleball courts that are open to the public and can be programmed would be within private open space.
Is this
Yeah, we could come to an agreement on that where it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday from 8 to 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. I mean, we can come up with all those parameters that allow us to have the use for those. Obviously, we'd want something like that if we're going to invest in them, right?
is this an HOA?
The apartments are not in an HOA.
Okay.
Everything around
I'm
it
just
is.
concerned about residents, how they would feel about
Yeah,
Right.
same problem.
That's another thing to think about.
outsiders coming in to use their facilities.
And would it only be the 2 that we would have access to program?
Again, that's
It's
negotiable.
whatever we negotiate.
okay.
And-
These are
and
just
In
the things
theory,
that
if
we
you
can
guys
do.
schedule
Where do
something, it
people
would be
park
at 4.
that are going to go in there and play that? If
Feed
we were
you
going to
all.
add that as part of the amenities
show 'em this
and
parking.
make it tournament,
The parking lot just to the east of the 4 pickleball courts would actually be added. That's not part of
Yeah,
the
that was
original.
Hmm.
So that whole area right there, it looks like maybe 20 plus or minus slots right there would be added as part of this. Is that- Right now, those are not currently planned, and those are not part of the parking that they need to meet the requirements of our city code.
so
And
we
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 have to
still
put
need our
that
city
in.
code.
Yep.
Sorry.
We can,
We have to put that in.
Again, that would be participation, right? So probably participation with the parking and the pickleball courts to be negotiated, I think, at this point in time.
we can talk about stipulations, but the enforcement of it's
Again, I think,
pretty vague.
I think as long as we have something that's recorded and also signage is gonna be the big thing, right? If we have proper signage and we have a document that shows that we have, again, Aaron said it as well. If we schedule it and we are agreed that that's when we're scheduled, that's what it is, and we would expect to be able to live by that.
And I wonder if we couldn't have the HOA manager that manages everything else also pick up scheduling that from time to time.
It's just an enforcement nightmare. I mean, I look at Centennial Park and what we would like to see happen there, and I see what is happening, and it's not the same.
I'll tell you what I compare it to is the park at Summit Ridge where the splash pad is. And I have had a lot of people complain to me that they come from downtown and go out there with their kids and they're told by people, hey, this is ours, go home. And
It's a city park.
I know, but that is something I've heard many times, not just once. And so, does the same thing happen with this?
This is a little different because it's on private property, and we'd have to have some understanding whether it's posted that this is reserved or scheduled in advance X nights. But not everybody could just show up anytime if it's on private property and
Well, and part of the reason that happens, we don't
it's
have
not a
enough
city park.
splash pad park.
Amenities.
So the more of these pickleball courts you have, the less that'll happen.
Dave wanted you to take half of it and make it a skate park.
That'd be awesome.
So again, the question is, what direction would you give us to then are you good with us starting to go and negotiate and bringing something back to, or do you want the pickleball courts? Are you willing to participate in that? We would have to amend our parks master plan, which we are in the middle of right now, to be able to do that. So it's actually a good time that we could get impact fees to help pay for the improvements here. Those types of things are all things to be able to consider, but we're asking for your direction on where you'd send us.
I would like some updated input from John Bradley. He was here I remember he was here when we discussed this, wasn't he, Lynn? When I remember him being here when we discussed this before, and he was super excited about it and he was all on board. But as you stated, our city pickleball courts down at Harvest View have since been installed and finished. So I would like some updated input on him or from him and what he might envision as programming and the schedule.
He
And
doesn't
then
have much to compare with right now, though, because they've been shut down since they had
Yeah.
the tournament.
There's no nets on them right now because we're not done with the park. The one
Yeah.
So we really don't
We only
have
have
numbers.
it
I don't
for
think
days.
we
I
can.
believe I can speak for John here. He's gonna say we should do
He'll
this.
program
From what
whatever
I
he can
know
get.
of John,
Just
yes.
from a pure programming, he's always coming to me and saying, hey, we need this for programming,
Yeah.
we need this for programming, lights at Orchard Hills, lights over here.
yeah, I
mean,
know.
there is never an overabundance of programming space in the city. And so I believe I can speak for him, but I'm happy to take back and get some information if that's where you'd have us go.
Yeah, I understand that. I just the decisions that we are looking at having to make in the next year, since this was originally discussed, just changes things for me.
I agree with Norm. I think that's what you'd hear from John. I don't think the question is if John would like more pickleball courts to program. The question comes down to what's the mayor and council's priority, because park impact fees could be used for a number of things. Is pickleball courts your highest priority, or are there other park related things that you'd like to spend those impact fees on?
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of if you want more. I think everybody would like more. It's a matter
It's of
is
what?
this a
What's
priority?
the priority, right?
Mhm.
Well, since this is a work meeting, we're not going to take a
Right.
motion and a vote. All we really have to do is hear a positive direction, maybe, or a negative direction on this.
I'll go there. I just want you to know that my feeling personally is that I don't want to invest in pickleball courts there. First of all, I think the issue will be the residents there is gonna expect that to be their pickleball courts anyway. That's number one, Art brought it up. Number two, I understand the programming part, but now we've since got our pickleball courts, we'll soon have. To me, you're gonna have to ask if you can get 3 councilmen that want to go that direction, because I will not vote to put money there. I'm only one vote.
I won't either. I don't think it's a good marriage. You're opening the city up to a whole bunch of headaches. As far as scheduling and planning, organizing, and the residents that are there are gonna feel like it belongs to them.
And please
Possibly
understand,
rightfully so.
We're not advocating
Yeah,
for this.
we
We're
know,
just
we know.
trying to,
I know.
to show all the
But
information.
you asked for direction.
Right,
But you-
if that's your direction.
There's also
then-
the other option, right?
There's an option where we just don't participate and we
Right.
then go to work with Mr. Jensen and he just puts 2 pickleball courts there that are his.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that's
And
the
still
direction you would
combining
have
the
us go, then
apartment, still
help us
combining
to
the
understand
apartments and
that.
all of that, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I speak for a second?
Sure.
Right. So a lot of this discussion's great, but to try and sum up what I have here and what I'm asking for, right? We've got this area west to center. That's the new concept. And what we did was we lost a road, but we kept the same unit count. We might have actually lost a unit. So we're not coming here to increase density. It was, we got rid of a road, and theoretically that, provides more open space. And for the apartment area, again, just more open space by consolidating those buildings. Same number of units. So we did the amenity exhibit A and B to try and show for the overall development, which isn't pointed out in just the apartment or the West Center area. This is bigger than all that, to try and take the amenities into account in regard to these two changes, so.
So, I mean, if you can give us direction now, great. If not, you could give it to us after the meeting. It's not like we have to have a decision right now, but I guess what I'd say is I see that there's three options. Option one, don't do anything. You expect that the current development agreement is what they're bound to. Option two is basically option A. Allow for the consolidation of those buildings and a couple changes in amenities. Option three is the same, but a little bit more, where the city is investing and partnering with him to add some more pickleball courts that could be programmed by the city. So, I mean, there's some flexibility and some tweaking within all those options, but those are pretty much your three options. Is option B, which is the extra investment, option A, which is just changing the amenities, or option one, do nothing.
And he doesn't care about pickleball. The other two things are what he needs done, right? You don't
Right.
care what we do with pickleball.
Well,
so can't you?
I don't think it's fair to say I don't care about pickleball.
Well, I understand that. I'm just
But
saying
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
care.
yeah.
It doesn't
about
affect
yeah.
you.
Yeah,
He's
well,
not asking
and
for
we
that.
could even come back and do
we
that
have
later.
to decide that
Yeah,
today?
that can be-
I mean, you're moving forward with everything
I'd
else.
say go with
Let's
option
decide
A.
that later.
And actually, I
Start
was just
looking at option
looking,
A and see
we
what-
lost 4 units on that west side. So we're
Okay.
reducing doors.
So I think the consensus of what I'm hearing is right, is we're in favor of option A, not entering into a marriage, with them on pickleball courts currently.
Okay.
At least three of you, sounds like.
Yeah.
But again, nothing's being decided.
And
Something will need to
it
be
can
worked
change
on. But
later on.
if we got kind of a some direction
Yeah.
from you that's the direction you want us to start working, then we will start putting the time and effort into working with Mr. Jensen to bring a proposed draft before you at a future meeting.
Yep.
And our attorney has already taken a look at the amendment to the development agreement that you provided and tried to tie it to the pictures we're showing here. So there's a draft of that my attorney's already gone through.
Okay.
So
The issue's just the pickleball court. That's what it sounds like. So we move with the changes that they wanted. And
Okay.
we'll go there.
We'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate you, Aaron. Upcoming agenda items. Do you want to go over the agenda items?
Sure. Sorry, Mayor and Council, I'll pull that up really quick. The agenda items that we have for the regular meeting are expenditures. Payson Santaquin Chamber, I believe, is going to be here. And then the last thing is just a Foothill Village Platte T amendment, which is essentially just getting us property that should have been deeded at the time that the plat was recorded, but for some reason was overlooked. And so this is at the top of Foothill Village Boulevard, which gets us the trail to go all the way from Highland Drive along Foothill Village Boulevard to Allen Hall. Gets us the trail to go all the way from, so this is really just a cleanup item, and it gives us the ability to get the land 10 foot wide by the depth of the lot that should have been deeded, and it just wasn't. So it's pretty clean and pretty, I think you've probably seen the memo from City Engineer Lundell, and I think it's pretty clean, and I don't know if there's anything that, I'm happy to answer questions, but it's in our favor, and it's something that needs to be done to be able to put the trail in there.
Who's gonna pay for the recording?
I would imagine they would do that.
They should.
It's an amended
Who's
plat.
gonna pay for the recording?
Okay.
I would imagine
No other questions?
They should.
Like,
Sorry, that's me.
Oh, what's in the back?
I was,
He didn't
well,
have it
he was
muted.
on his meeting, I was watching our meeting online, and now it's feeding back, so I apologize for that.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting so we can prepare for
So
the next.
moved.
Second?
Second.
There you go.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.